And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Friday, November 8th. I am Josh Engleman. I just said my own name incorrectly. This is going to be a long Friday. We have 54 minutes to do this. I'm Josh Engleman. It ends in an N, not a D. I am joined by a D. That would be DK. He's here. We're breaking down 13 games over the next hour and then turning this bad boy over to Live Before Lock. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live, and follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman. Follow DK there as well, DK__DFS. What's going on, man? How are you today?
Yeah, doing pretty good. 11-game NBA slate, so we definitely have a lot to talk about, and ready to hopefully close out the week on a strong note.
We got a lot to talk about. This is going to be quite the journey, and we are going to do it pretty quickly. So normally I have a ton of pleasantries and I want to waste everybody's time, but not today. Are you ready to dive in?
Yeah, let's do it.
All righty. I'm just going to move this window to the right-hand side, and we are going to start the Indiana Pacers, 7-point favorites in Charlotte. 236 total. This is the highest total on the slate, unless I typed that in incorrectly, and I don't think that I did. Well, it's down to 235.5, but that's not the point. Bunch of ownership coming here on the Indy side, so this is a spot that we need to start and really look at. Tyrese Halliburton's around 10 on DK, 25 on FanDuel. Siakam's only 5 on DraftKings, but 15 on FanDuel. Benedict Mathurin is 28 on both sites. Miles Turner's 21 on FanDuel. That's pretty popular, but not as popular as it is on DraftKings. He is at 48%. Minimal ownership coming into the rest of the Pacers. We are still waiting on TJ McConnell news. But I've got to ask you, how are you dealing with Indy here? Because this is a fantastic matchup.
Yeah, you got to like the Pacers here. Again, TJ McConnell news is somewhat important, right? Still on the injury report there. If he misses, you're probably just going to get more solidified minutes for guys like Halliburton and Nembhard. But got to start with Miles Turner, right? Projecting for massive ownership. And I kind of agree with it. I mean, the minutes have ticked up. They really have been playing small ball behind him since Isaiah Jackson went down. So the minutes have been more secure. It's a phenomenal spot here against the Hornets. He's at a reasonable price point at 6.2. So, yeah, I kind of agree with the Miles Turner ownership. I think he's one of the better point per hour plays on the slate. Another, guy that's getting a lot of ownership, as you talked about, is Benedict Mathurin. He has nice eligibility, shooting guard, small forward. Has also seen a nice increase in minutes as well, 30+ in each of the last 4 games. So he stands out as a good point per dollar play. Halliburton, the price at 8.1 feels about right. The ceiling isn't as high on Halliburton when Nembhard is playing. The assists are also down when Nembhard is in. So no real super strong takes on Halliburton. I definitely prefer Turner and Mathurin. And then if TJ McConnell does play, I think he's a pretty solid value there. Siakam at 7.8 is not getting a lot of love. I think he's a reasonable contrarian option. Obi Toppin also getting basically no ownership. He's benefited a bit here, kind of playing some small ball. Production's been a little bit up and down, but wanted to mention that as a kind of dart throw in GPPs.
All righty. So the way that I'm looking at it right now, it's not that I think Turner is a little over-owned on DraftKings. For an 11-game slate, for him to be 48, the price is a little low, and yeah, the matchup's great for a team without any centers, but it's really crazy to me to think that he's going to be in half of the lineups on just a normal day for him. There's no it's not like his price was accidentally 4K or something. So I like him a lot, but center is the most plentiful thing for us to get to. Every team sort of has a really good point per dollar version of him. So I'm really curious to see if I end up getting to him. I'm actually not playing DK tonight. I'm playing FanDuel, so I won't have as much of a problem since he's not as owned and there's only one center. He does look to me very clearly like the best guy you can get to from Indy, although, I think you can make a real good case for Benedict Mathurin with shooting guard, small forward eligibility. There's a lot more flexibility getting to Mathurin. But Turner, on a point per dollar basis, very clearly to me, the best option you can get to from Indy. Halliburton, Siakam, they're certainly going to work their way into lineups for me. I wouldn't even be surprised if I had a share or two of Nembhard. I didn't expect him to immediately go right back to 30 minutes, but he did. The rest of this, I'm not super worried about. But Halliburton, Siakam, Mathurin, Turner, that group of 4 dudes, they're going to be in a lot of stuff today.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense, right? It's just a smash buy here against the Hornets, so I think you have to have interest in these Pacers.
I could not agree more. So we're going to look on the Charlotte side then. There's some ownership coming in here too, about 10 to 15% on LaMelo Ball. We've got 20 coming into Grant Williams on DraftKings, and we've got about 15 for Cody Martin across both sites. They still don't have Nick Richards, and now the big new piece of news today, Miles Bridges is out for Charlotte. How are you handling these guys? Because I'm a little surprised the LaMelo's getting as much love as he is. I don't totally agree with his ownership today. Grant Williams makes the most sense to me. Cody Martin is Cody Martin. I don't know how else to say anything about him. I'll have pieces of the Charlotte team, but I'm not super interested.
Yeah, I don't think there's like any standout play here on Charlotte. A couple guys at low ownership I think are interesting though. Brandon Miller, 6.3K, coming in sub 10% owned. He's been getting a lot of shots up, 18 and 16 shots in 2 of the last 3 games. The one in between there was a blowout, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. So I kind of like him as a tournament play. He's got the nice eligibility. Again, should play 30 plus minutes here, and without Miles Bridges, should have a bit more usage. So kind of like Brandon Miller there at low ownership. Trey Mann minutes have been down a bit, but 5K, I think he's another reasonable contrarian option. And then the guys getting the most ownership, again, LaMelo, Grant Williams, and Cody Martin, I think are all fair options. Cody Martin, just like a relatively safe value play. You're not going to get excited about playing him, but definitely going to get a minutes bump here without Bridges. LaMelo Ball, the ceiling's pretty high on him. Again, he's getting some ownership. I think there's definitely some pivots you can look to in this range. Maybe I agree with you, going a little bit over-owned. And then Grant Williams, I think, is a fair value play. They've been starting Taj Gibson at the 5, but they've been closing with Grant Williams the last couple games. So would expect him to play, 25 plus minutes in a game like this. But I think, looking at ownership, probably my favorite option would be Brandon Miller.
I like that shout. Definitely not somebody that's getting a ton of love today, and certainly could be just the focal point of the offense. Anything else for Indy and Charlotte?
I think that's it.
Atlanta Hawks, 1-point dogs in Detroit, 227 total. For Atlanta, it's sort of what we've seen recently. No DeAndre Hunter, plus the laundry list of other dudes that have just been out for basically the entire season. There are no double-digit ownership plays coming from Atlanta. Jalen Johnson got to 9. The rest of this team just does not look very good. Jalen Johnson is also 21% on FanDuel. I do think Jalen Johnson looks the best, but my expectation is that I do not have much of this Atlanta Hawks team.
Yeah, this is looking at ownership. I like this team for tournaments. Jalen Johnson, I think, continues to go overlooked by the field. 8.5K, the price has come up, but his role is just so secure right now. The potential assists are up. He's averaging like 12 potential assists over the last 4 games. The rebounding numbers are great. He's playing, high 30s minutes in competitive games, and this is a decent spot here against the Pistons. So I'm pretty high on Jalen Johnson. I think he's one of my favorite tournament plays of the slate. The rest of the team, I'm expecting big minutes for Dyson Daniels to guard Cade, but the price is up on him. Ricochet had that massive game kind of out of nowhere last game. Yeah. I don't think we'd expect that again. And then Trae Young, I think, is an okay contrarian option there at 10.4, going sub 1% ownership against the Pistons. Did want to mention that, but I don't think I'm going to mess with the centers. Capello, Kongu splitting the center minutes. So I think for me, Jalen Johnson's kind of the standout play there.
Yeah, same page there. They do kind of look like pivots more than anything else. Just guys you can grab in a GPP that aren't, other than Jalen Johnson. Guys that you can grab and swap out for somebody that is pulling a little bit of ownership. Like you want to swap LaMelo to Trae Young to be different in a relatively chalky lineup. I could understand the appeal for something like that. The Detroit side is way more popular. 25% to Cade on DraftKings, 25% to Tobias Harris on DraftKings, 15 to Beef Stew and Jaden Ivey. Jalen Duren is out for this one, so I'm expecting to see the starter run go to Isaiah Stewart. I will say the caveat, Paul Reed is a better basketball player than Isaiah Stewart. That's probably not going to matter today, but just putting it out there for the future. 15% ownership to Cade on FanDuel, 20 to Ivey, 10 to Harris, 10 to Stewart. What do you like the most here? Because there are some appealing spots here against an Atlanta team that's not that great of a defense.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that Isaiah Stewart's not getting as much ownership as I thought. I thought he would be a little bit more popular here. Should start at the 5, should play probably high 20s minutes. So I think he stands out as a pretty good value option. And then I like Cade at 8-7, back-to-back triple doubles. Has again, leading the team in usage and potential assists as well. So I think Cade looks pretty good. I think Tobias Harris may be going a little bit over-owned, but I get why the ownership is there. 5.9K feels like a solid price point. Ivy at 6.3 stands out as another pretty good play there in the mid-range. I don't think I'll get to anyone else. Again, Paul Reed will back up Isaiah Stewart. If Stewart gets in foul trouble, he'll benefit. But they're close enough in price where I'm just gonna go to Stewart. And again, he's not getting as much ownership as I thought too. So I think the two favorite plays for me would be Stewart at 4-3 and then Cade at 8-7.
Yeah, Beef's still a much different play on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel. He has the power forward eligibility on FanDuel, but he's already 5,100. The price is a lot more appealing on the DK side. I actually didn't get to any of him on FanDuel. I actually have quite a bit of Cade, which will never make me mad. Right around the field on Jaden Ivey. I'm not upset about that. I don't have a ton of Tobias Harris. I'm also not upset about that. Matching the field on Jalen Johnson. I just finished my sim, so I wanted to circle back on that. Matching the field on Jalen Johnson. Nothing all that interesting. Just in and around the field for the indie guys in that first game. But it looks like I'm going to be taking a decent enough stand on Cade Cunningham tonight on FanDuel, 8,900, 15% owned. I'm about 2x the field right now, so feels kind of good. That definitely the kind of guy I'm happy to be over the field on. That's for sure. What else do we got here? Yeah, I don't have much interest in like the Tim Hardaway, Malik Beasley coin flip. It's kind of it. It really is sort of those main three guys plus Beef Stew for right now.
Yep, I agree.
Ooh, this one is not as fun to talk about. The New Orleans Pelicans are 6-point dogs in Orlando, 211 total. This is by far the lowest total on today's slate. New Orleans continues to be without basically their entire team. Not to mention, we are still waiting on the Q tag for Zion Williamson, but no DeJounte, no Trey Murphy, no CJ, no Herb Jones, no Jordan Hawkins. 26% ownership coming into Brandon Boston on DraftKings at 4,400. 34% coming into FanDuel for Brandon Boston. Barely any ownership to anybody else for the Pels. Now, that will probably change quite a bit if we end up getting no Zion, but right now, I absolutely love Brandon Boston.
Yeah, I agree. I'm surprised he's not getting more ownership. Since he's been moved into the starting lineup, he's playing huge minutes, 37 and 38 minutes over the last couple games, 4.4K. So I think Brandon Boston stands out as a really good value option on the slate. Definitely one of the better values for sure. A little bit surprised that Alvarado's not getting more love though. Sub 10% owned. He gets a nice bump in usage with all these guys out. Minutes have been very secure for him as well. 34 and 35 minutes over the last couple of games. He's got up over the last 5 games, 13, 12, 12, 14, 14 shot attempts, right? He has the ball in his hands a ton too, averaging like 6 assists in those games. So a little bit surprised he's not getting more love, but again, he is only point guard eligible, so that could be why. And then Brandon Ingram, probably not going to get to him if Zion plays, but if Zion misses, they're going to lean on him to do everything. And then you're just going to start looking to guys like JRE and Javonte Green if Zion gets ruled out. JRE did get the start last game that Zion missed, so would expect him to start if Zion can't go.
And that will definitely be something important to keep an eye on. I'm anxious to see how many minutes Brandon Boston plays here today, because if he gets up around that 38 again, that is going to feel pretty darn good. But heavily owned, really nice value. They're running out of guys. They got to fill minutes in some way. And if we get no Zion, it's full steam ahead on Brandon Boston. Definitely some other parts here for the Pels. The Orlando side is 25% ownership on both sites to Goga Batadze, around 15 for Suggs on both sites, and then 15 for Franz on DraftKings, 35 on FanDuel. I'm actually matching that on the FanDuel side. I did not get to a share of Goga, unfortunately. I had a bunch of him last time out over the field. That was nice. Today, I'm kind of going the opposite way. Not that he doesn't look good. Grades out really well. Just a little bit more ownership than I want to take on for a one center site. What stands out to you for Orlando? Not a great offense here, but also not a great team across the court from them.
Right. Yeah, I think Goga is probably the standout for me. He is getting the most ownership, but I agree with that. He's going to start. He's probably going to play close to that 30-minute mark.
So in the 2 games that he started so far, 30 and 27 minutes. So 27 minutes, though, he got pulled because of the blowout. He lost about 3 minutes. So I would expect, close to that 30-minute mark for Goga Bitadze. He's a good rebounder, solid point per minute for a big. The only thing is, again, relatively high opportunity cost. We've talked about some centers that we like a good amount already. So you got to make some tough calls there for sure. But I do think Goga is one of the better center plays right now. And then Jalen Suggs gets a nice usage and assist bump with Paolo off the court. The potential assists have been really, really good for him over the last 4 games. So I think he's a fair play there at 7.3. Franz Wagner at 8K probably has the highest ceiling of anyone on this team. He's getting about 18% ownership. I think I agree with that. I don't think I'm going to get to anyone else, though. KCP is getting a little bit of ownership. I just don't really see the ceiling on him. But I'm probably not going to mess like Anthony Black or Tristan Da Silva or anyone like that. I think there's probably better value.
Yeah, I don't really have any of those other guys right now. I think the focus would be Suggs, Franz, Goga. And like I said, I like Goga for sure. Probably like him a little bit more on DraftKings because you can roster more than one center there. It's probably going to be a little bit tougher for me from FanDuel. I'm interested to see what centers I'm really unloading on as we work our way through the show, because every time I pull up one of these games, it's a learning experience, and I'm going to find out what I'm actually getting to because I have not looked. I just pasted my lineups in and we're moving forward. Okay, quickly. I need you guys to hit the like button. We've got, 1,300 plus people in here right now. Thumbs ups are the best, man. Run that number up so we can get to 500 by the time we get to Live Before Lock. Speaking of Live Before Lock, as I mentioned, it's coming up next, 6 p.m. start. They'll take you all the way up until 7, at which point Greg and I will be on Playback. Playback.tv/Stokastic. Come watch the games with us. Sweat lineups, sweat bets, just have random conversation. We're watching the games, whatever's on at 7 o'clock and 7:30. We'll be bouncing around through whatever games are most interesting. And you guys can do that by either linking your own League Pass account or you can get a VIP pass from us. We have 20 of those to hand out. So come hang out with us. It's a really fun time. And hopefully we'll watch a little bit of Phoenix Dallas, hopefully. Not a ton of great basketball going on in those early games. We keep it moving. Brooklyn Nets, 13-point dogs in Boston, 220 total. There is no ownership whatsoever coming into this Brooklyn team on either site. I don't even think the Noah Clowney news would really move that all that much. My guess is that I will have absolutely no Brooklyn, and I am totally cool with that.
Yep, they're basically a cross-off to me. Nothing really standing out. Claxton's at 6K. He did start last game. The minutes still have not been amazing for him, though. 27 minutes in that most recent one. They've been playing small ball behind him. Again, Clowney news, I don't think is super important. If Clowney plays, he'll play a little bit of back and 5. If not, they'll just kind of go small ball behind him. We know the ceiling is high on, Cam Thomas, but at 7.5K, I think there's just better options on the slate. The guy getting the most love is Ben Simmons at 4.8. I think if I had to pick someone, it would be him. But again, he's only point guard eligible. The assist numbers, assist percentage, I should say, goes down for Dennis Schroeder when Ben Simmons is in the lineup. His price is up too. Cam Johnson's price is up. There's just really nothing that I like on Brooklyn.
Yeah, and matchup against Boston doesn't exactly make things feel better. That's for sure. There's not a lot of love coming into the Boston side either. Like, all the dudes that get any minutes are sort of like 5 to 10% owned, whether that's Tatum or White or, Holiday on DraftKings, Peyton Pritchard on DraftKings, except for Keita, because Luke Cornett, not available here. We already know Kristaps Porzingis is out. So 10% ownership coming into Keita at 4,500 on DraftKings, 20% ownership coming into Keita on FanDuel. What are you seeing here for Boston? Because the matchup's good, but I feel like they're going to be playing most of this game in second gear.
Yeah, I think Keita's probably the easiest guy to get to. Again, Cornette not expected to play. Keita has started the last couple of games. He's a decent point per minute player for a big and reasonable price point there. So he's probably the easiest guy to get to. But as we've mentioned a couple times, high opportunity cost. There's a lot of good center plays. So that is kind of the downside there. Derek White getting a little bit of love. He gets a nice usage bump with Jaylen Brown off the court. But the price is slowly ticked up on him. Drew Holiday and Peyton Pritchard in the low 5K range, I think, are reasonable contrarian options. Sam Hauser probably pushes for about 20 minutes off the bench. Maybe a little bit interested in for tournaments. The price is up on Tatum. I do expect Xavier Tillman to play more. He's the flat min price. I don't think it's necessary on the slate, but I wanted to mention that I think he should see a bump in minutes with Cornette not expected to play.
Yeah, I'm assuming they're going to start using him. I feel like that's the only thing that they can do at this point, but they seem to be less than interested in him right now. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, like I have him in for 16 minutes. I agree that I think he's going to play, but I expected him to get rotated in a little bit more at the beginning of the season, and that just hasn't happened. I do have a bit of Kate on FanDuel. 4,100 looks really good. I went 26 minutes. Has the potential to play more. Be interested to see what they would close with. I would expect them, if this was some sort of competitive matchup, that it would be Horford at the 5 and one of like Hauser or Peyton Pritchard.
Do you think they could start Sam Hauser in this game and just go Horford at the 5?
Absolutely. They can do whatever they want to do.
Yeah. Just wanted to mention that because like
they could start Pritchard if they really wanted to, and it would affect absolutely nothing. Like I'm quite confident Drew Holiday can handle playing the 3 against Brooklyn.
Yep.
I had a little bit of Derek White and Cato, but that was essentially it on the FanDuel side. I actually did have one single share of Nick Claxton, so that's a thing. Not fun, but whatever. We'll see what that ends up being. Golden State and Cleveland. Honestly, this is the best game of the day. These two defenses are stellar. To me, they will be top 5 defenses at the end of the season, barring any crazy injuries. Speaking of crazy injuries, though, we do have to wait on Golden State. Q-tag Draymond, Q-tag Melton, Q-tag Pajemski. Also on the opposite side, Q-tag Dean Wade, Q-tag Sam Merrill. Wade did go through shoot around. I didn't see anything on the Warriors, so feel free to add that in. But it might not matter. If everybody's in, I don't think Golden State is playable in any way other than if you want to click on Steph Curry's name. If one of those guys is out, I probably don't care. If 2 of them are out, it still might not even matter because these guys are going to run out 12 dudes and you're not going to be able to predict their minutes.
Yeah, I couldn't find anything on Twitter, like shoot around or anything for the Warriors. So I don't really have any takes there. But assuming they're all in, I mean, Steve Kerr's been running a 12-man rotation when this team is fully healthy and not necessarily the best spot against Cleveland. So assuming everyone's in, this team is basically crossed off as well. If you start ruling some of these guys out, then some of these rotation players become playable. I still don't think anyone would stand out if like Green, Pajemski, Melton get rolled out, but definitely guys would look better. Like they would probably have to play Moody more. Kyle Anderson probably have to play more. Wiggins, Kuminga, right? I think everyone just kind of get a slight minutes bump there. But yeah, assuming right now they're all in, this team is another basically cross off.
Yeah, I don't have a single share of them on FanDuel, and there's no way I get anything other than Steph. It's not like the Cleveland side looks great, but I'm going to let you know I like it a little bit more. It's like 5 to 10% ownership on Mitchell, Garland, Allen, and Mobley, and there's not another soul even sniffing ownership for Cleveland, no matter which site you're playing on. I like Cleveland a lot here today. I was actually a bit higher on some of these guys earlier, but I did a pretty solid deeper dive on all of these guys prior to starting up this show. So I have 14% of Mitchell on FanDuel. I have 21% of Garland. I have 30 of Jared Allen, and I have 10 of Evan Mobley. And my hypothesis is basically these guys kick the shit out of everybody at the beginning of the year, and their minutes are depressed if you're just looking at an average line. But I think this is a really competitive matchup. 4-point line. I think Golden State's like a really quality regular season team. This depth is real. They can move people around for whatever matchup they're sort of in. So I'm anticipating a situation where Cleveland can, those main guys, I expect them to see the floor like a bit more than the expectation. And I think that's why I'm basically 2xing Cleveland compared to the ownership on FanDuel. Do you like Cleveland here? I'm guessing not the same way that I do, but...
Yeah, not the same way, but I do like your point. Like they've been like destroying teams, and a lot of the times they've been blowing them out. So like that starters not being full minutes, even in competitive games though, like the starters haven't been getting like great minutes. I do think though they could get a bump in minutes here, so I like that take. But any of the main 4 I think would be in consideration: Mitchell, Mobley, Allen, Garland. I guess if I had to pick one, it probably would be Mobley. 7.4K, power forward center. eligible. So yeah, he's been playing a backup 5 minutes too when Jared Allen's down the court, which is, helping his rebounding numbers. You mentioned Dean Wade went through shoot around. I am expecting him to play. If he does not play, you would get Okoro in the starting lineup. Don't think it's going to matter either way, and probably wouldn't look to Okoro. But yeah, Garland, Allen, Mobley, Mitchell, really the only guys I think you can look to. And I think Mobley, the preferred option.
I really like Jared Allen today. I'm really, the fact that you can get him at power forward on FanDuel is pretty appealing to me. And he's the lowest owned dude of the 4 main guys from Cleveland. So that is probably going to be the stand I have. And then, Darius Garland at 6,800, I just think is a hair underpriced. It's definitely a tough spot. This will look a lot better offensively for Cleveland if like Draymond happens to be out, but I'll be paying close attention to this one. I just expect to be quite a bit over on Cleveland. Ryan Dunn out. Bet everybody was really just waiting with bated breath to find out if he was going to be out. We go to Phoenix and Dallas. Another really good game. I'm a big fan of Phoenix this year. 2.5 point dogs in Dallas, 231 total. Much like basically every other day. It feels like Phoenix gets no ownership no matter what slate they're on, no matter what size it is. And today is no different. 6% to Nurk on DraftKings is the highest mark on either site for Phoenix. Now I'm getting to a bit of Nurk on the FanDuel side. I think he's a little under-owned. I actually think he's playing more and more minutes right now. I think he was kind of playing his way into shape a little bit at the beginning of the season. We might see him a little bit more. I got a little bit of Booker. I got a little bit of Durant. But these guys are unowned on DraftKings.
We just got a notification actually that Booker is now questionable, illness. So that could change some things.
Yeah, that'll be Zion out too.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So we're starting to get some news.
Holy shit. Here we go. Okay. So yeah, obviously, do you want to hit on like if Booker is out? Do you have any thoughts if he's in, and then where do you want to go if he's out?
Yeah, so if Booker is in, there's nothing that stands out to me. I mean, you can take shots in Booker, KD, Beal. The minutes on Nurk have ticked up. He usually does play more against bigger centers, so 5.8K, viable contrarian center play. So many good centers though, so it is tough to prioritize him. If Devin Booker is out, that's where things get interesting. It had been Ryan Dunn starting when like Beal had been missing, but now he is out too. So would probably expect like Grayson Allen or Royce O'Neal to shift into the starting lineup. And then you would get a pretty nice bump in usage to KD and Booker, or KD and Beal, I should say, if Booker gets ruled out. So would definitely have interest in those two. And then whoever starts for Booker would be a solid point power play. I think it would either be Grayson Allen or Royce O'Neal.
Yeah, I would lean Allen in that scenario, but it could be either direction. I just don't know how many minutes Grayson Allen can handle right now. They're definitely babying him on his way back through. But yeah, like on the DraftKings side, assuming Booker, if Booker is in, these guys just look like tournament pivots to me.
Yep, agree.
And Dallas isn't getting a ton of love, 10 to 15% ownership on Luka, basically nothing on Kyrie, 12 to Najee Marshall on FanDuel. He's basically unowned on DraftKings, and then 13 to Daniel Gafford across both sites. I've got 20 of Luka on FanDuel. I'm right with the field of Gafford on FanDuel, but I also have 28% of Najee Marshall, and I honestly wouldn't be mad if I got a little bit more. I think this particular matchup is good for him because they don't have really anybody else on this team that could approximate defense on Kevin Durant. Like he's kind of the only human being they have that can do this. So his minutes might end up being like disproportionately high if he stays out of foul trouble. So I like the value of Marshall. Didn't go well last time out. What do you like for Dallas?
Yeah, I like the Najee Marshall call out. He's getting very little ownership. So only played 21 minutes in their most recent game. He moved in the starting line for PJ Washington. However, the game was a massive blowout. He actually played 16 first half minutes. So I think you're probably going to expect around 30 minutes from Najee Marshall, small forward, power forward eligibility. So I do like him as a contrarian value. I think the guy that is the easiest to get to would be Daniel Gafford, 5.1K. He and Dwight Powell split the center minutes until the blowout last game. And would expect Gafford, assuming he can avoid foul trouble / injury, to play like mid to high 20s minutes. He has been going to the locker room, but returning And like, I want to say each of the last 3 games, he's been riding the bike. So he's definitely dealing with something. But he's been gutting it out and returning. Luka, Kyrie, neither getting a ton of love. I think both, I'm fine if you want to get to either of those guys. I don't think there's anything else I'm going to get to. Pass on Clay. Dinwiddie's been in their rotation, but he's been really bad. So I think the preferred options would be Gafford, and then I like to call it there on Najee Marshall.
Gafford's easy to get to. He was trending big minutes. He and Powell were looking like they were going to split all 48, so that could be pretty interesting. I don't want anybody else here though. Dinwiddie, Powell. I don't want Powell, Grimes, Omax Prosper, Hart. I'm good on the rest of these dudes.
Yep.
Okay, that's 6 games. All right, we've picked up enough pace that we're looking pretty good. Game number 7 here. Milwaukee and New York. This is a 7:30 tip-off. Bucks are 7-point dogs in New York. 223 total. It looks pretty bleak here for Milwaukee, assuming Andre Jackson is right back into the starting lineup. Gary Trent is questionable for today. 4% ownership to Giannis on both sites, 4% ownership to Andre Jackson on both sites, no ownership to anybody else. I don't anticipate having the Knicks. If I got Giannis, cool.
Yeah, I think Giannis is a solid contrarian spend up. 11.2K is a reasonable price point. We know the ceiling that he provides, so anytime you can get to Giannis, you can't be mad about that. Andre Jackson was a pretty popular value play last slate. It worked out. He's not a great point per minute player, but expect him to start. He did play pretty well. Had 4 steals. Don't think we'd expect that again. So he's like an okay punt play. I do think there's better values on the board though. And then I agree. There's nothing else really. Dame's price is up. I'm not going to get to Brook Lopez. There's so many good center plays on the slate. There's nothing. Bobby Portis price is up from Giannis being out, so I'm not playing Gary Trent Jr. off the bench either. I think it's just a little bit of interest in Giannis and Andre Jackson, and that's it.
Yeah, those are the only 2 dudes. And then, if Lillard's 8,700 on FanDuel. That's $1,000 cheaper than he is on DraftKings. He can certainly pay that one off, but I still don't like him here. I mean, this is a really rough spot from a pace perspective. It's not a rough spot from a defense perspective because Karl Anthony Towns doesn't know how to do that. I don't know if you happened to listen to the strategy show this morning. When Karl Anthony Towns is able to contest a shot within 5 feet of the basket, everyone is shooting 90% to date this season. Auto bucket so far. Now that will come down because that would break records by like a staggering percentage. But he offers little resistance. So if they can get to the rack, particularly Giannis, no one's slowing him down.
That's a wild stat, by the way.
Yeah, and like that's not a small sample either at this point.
Right.
That basically everything's just going in. Yeah, that's comical. He can't protect the rim to save his life. Now the Knicks side. Really no ownership here. It's all under 10% on the FanDuel end. The only guy that got over 10% on DraftKings is Towns at 13%. I have 16% of Anunoby. I've got 16% of Brunson. I actually don't have Josh Hart for the first time in ages. But like these guys are just going to play like 38 minutes. I'll never feel bad about getting one of the starters from the Knicks in a lineup.
Yep. Not huge news, but campaign questionable. I don't really think that's going to change much. They've kind of around like a 7-man rotation, which is insane. I think any of the starters are decent options. Cat getting the most ownership, but yeah, as you mentioned, there's playing huge minutes. So Hart 6'7", OG 5'6", Mikal Bridges 6.1K. They're all viable. Miles McBride, I wanted to mention. He's getting sub 1% ownership. I think he's a reasonable contrarian option. He has pretty secure role for this team as the one guy playing decent minutes off the bench, averaging like high 20s minutes a game. So I think he's a reasonable contrarian play there at 4.6. And then, no issue with any of the starters. So yeah, McBride is a contrarian option, and then all the starters I think are fair plays.
Yeah, 16 of Anunoby, 16 of Brunson, no Bridges, minimal Hart. I don't have any Cat on FanDuel. That is not appealing to me. 8,400 on DraftKings, 9,200 on FanDuel. And the scoring system for FanDuel doesn't necessarily suit him. It's not like he's out there sending shots into the stands either. If he was, that 90% would probably go away. That's for sure. All right. So we've made it through 7 games. Got to hit you with this one really quickly. I would love to dig into it more, but I can't. There is a link in the description of this video. If you click it, you can get a month of our Sims for free. Oh, that's a hell of a graphic. Nice. I can even read off of the graphic now because my face isn't on the screen. That's fantastic. So click that link and sign up. You'll get a month of our Sims and some sort of benefit from whichever one of these places you're signing up for. Sportsbooks and pick'em sites, Underdog, FanDuel, Vivid, BetMGM. I'm going to tell you right now, just don't sign up for DraftKings Pick 6. They have ruined the entire product. Don't give them your business. DraftKings specifically, though, okay. Better, Caesars, Sleeper, Bet365, Rebet. There are bonuses and deposit bonuses and bonus bets and things for all of these different spots. So you're going to get something when you sign up there and a month of our Sims. Very, very easy. And some of these deposit bonus offers, if you're in a legal sports betting state, are really, really tasty. So don't sleep on this offer. You just have to follow the instructions that you see on the screen. But the link is in the description of this video. Oh, that was perfect. Hell of a graphic. Saved me from trying to do it off the top of my head. But yeah, DraftKings Pick 6, extra special double thumbs down for those dudes now. Ruining their product on a day-to-day basis. The Washington Wizards are 7.5-point dogs in Memphis, 231 total. We have 12% ownership coming into Bub Carrington on both sites. Every single other player for the Wizards is in single digits. Actually have not quite a bit, but 2xing the field on Keyshawn George. I really don't have anything else here from Washington. Are you looking to go to the worst team in the league?
So not a ton of interest in this team. They are running a relatively tight rotation. I think the ownership is a little high in Bub Carrington, 5.5K. He is playing good minutes, but I think I'll pass on him over 10% ownership. Jonas Valanciunas, I think, is a reasonable contrarian center play. Could play a little bit more against Memphis, who's a bit of a bigger team. So he almost had like a triple-double kind of out of nowhere last game. So a little bit of interest there, but not much else. I mean, the price is up in Koulibaly. He should play big minutes. Koulibaly. The price is up a bit on George, and he's playing good minutes, but it's kind of a price thing here for the Wizards. So I think my favorite play would be JB. And again, I think the ownership is a little bit high right now in Bub.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm under the field there. I went to Keyshawn George at lesser ownership than Bub Carrington. And it's not going to be a fun spot for him. Even a Memphis team that's aggressively dinged up. They're just constantly missing people. For example, the Memphis Grizzlies today will be without, I'm filibustering here. I can't find it in the injury report. Come on. Where the hell is Memphis? There we are. No Desmond Bane, no G.G. Jackson, no Ja Morant, no Marcus Smart, no Cam Spencer, no Vince Williams. It's brutal, dude. It's brutal. That's 3 starters. And honestly, it's going to be 3 starters one way or the other. If they move Marcus Smart to the bench and start Vince Williams one way or the other, they're missing 3 starters. 27% ownership coming into Scottie Pippen Jr. on DraftKings. Looks like a really good play. 65% ownership coming into Scottie Pippen on FanDuel, and I have slightly more than that. Santi Aldama's around 20. Jaren Jackson's like around 35. Jake LaRavia's 16 on FanDuel, where he's 4,900. There's just a lot to like here. FanDuel particular, but what do you like here?
Yeah, so a good amount to like here, obviously, with Ja, Bane, and Smart out. I feel like Memphis over the last couple of years who just had like half their team out. I feel like it's just like every single day. But Jaren Jackson Jr. gets a nice usage bump with Ja Morant off the court. 7.2K. Like the upside in him quite a bit. You always had to mention it with Jaren Jackson Jr. because he is pretty foul prone. But you look on the Wizards side, I'm like, okay, I don't really see him getting in foul trouble. I don't think it's as likely as maybe if it was against a different team. Scottie Pippen, expecting him to move in the starting lineup. He's a really good point per minute player. I'm expecting 30-plus minutes from him. So I think he stands out as one of the better point per hour plays on the slate. Santi Aldama should play 30-plus minutes. His rebound chances have ticked up over the last few games. So he looks good. Jaren, Aldama, Pippen, I think the 3 easiest guys to get to. Zach Edey, I'll mention as a contrarian center option. The only downside with him is just the minutes, right? They can fluctuate. They can go to Clark. They can go to Jay Huff. So, like, the minutes are not as secure for a guy like Edey. Luke Kennard getting a little bit of ownership. I think he's a viable dart throw in tournaments. I just don't know how many minutes he can play. Again, he's only played, I believe, 1 game so far.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And then Laravia and Wells prices feel about right. So Jackson, Pippen, Aldama, I think the top options.
I said this morning, and I want to reiterate right now, even though we don't have time for me to reiterate what I'm about to do. Don't play Zach Edey today. I don't take a lot of like personal opinion stands here. I'll take what the data gives me. Don't play Zach Edey today. I'm willing to stand on this one. I think he is the most matchup dependent person that exists in the league right now. And Zach Edey made his bread by dominating because he's massive. You know who's also massive? The guy that's probably going to play every single second alongside of him, which is Joe Val. He can't just go through Joe Val. There aren't too many other human beings that are like big enough to deal with Zach Edey. Joe Val is one of those dudes in the NBA. I think this spot is awful. I think he is going to look really rough in this one. The idea of like stretching Joe Val out with someone like Jay Huff looks way better to me. So I am extra special down on Zach Edey for this particular matchup. When you can get him against Brooklyn, when they have 24 minutes of one legitimate center who's also not gigantic, yeah, he's going to treat those guys pretty poorly and it's going to look like a college game. When it's the Haas of Joe Val, I'm out 100%.
We just got to update Booker, optimistic he'll play. And TJ McConnell ruled out, by the way.
Okay, TJ out. Yeah, probably doesn't matter too much. And Booker's just weird. Oh, yeah, Luke Cornett officially out too. But
yep,
we kind of knew that. He was doubtful. Okay. Hit 60 and 80x on pick 6 last night. Guess it sucks. Congratulations, James. You don't understand a single thing I said. Just because you won doesn't make it good. That's not how this works.
Agree on the pick 6, by the way. I do not like that update. I haven't liked either of the updates so far. I like the original version.
the original version was great. They made a change and it got significantly worse. And then now it's awful. Just because you win doesn't mean it's good. Understand the product that you're playing, man. Play the other pick'em sites. It'll cost you like 15 to 20% less of your money. Oh my God. I read the whole message, brother. It was awful. Trust me. Houston and OKC, 8.5-point dogs against the Thunder. We've got some ownership coming in here, which is interesting. Basically, the entire starting 5 is unowned. But Amin Thompson's 10% owned on DraftKings, and Tari Eason is north of 20. The floor is yours here. Terrible matchup against Oklahoma City. How do you want to read into this? I don't trust this Houston team at all.
Yeah, ownership does feel a little bit high on those two guys off the bench. The minutes have ticked up, and again, Tari Eason is a good point per minute player. So, like, I understand why he's getting some ownership, but 20% does feel a little bit high there. Amen Thompson also has been playing pretty well for this team and has seen an increase in minutes. But yeah, I feel like the ownership is a bit high there. No one else is getting any love for Houston. Kind of agree with it. I think Şengün would probably be the one starter I would maybe take a shot on, but his minutes are like so weird. He's not even a guarantee to close. Like you said, not a good spot here against Oklahoma City either. So, a little bit interesting Eason and Thompson, but I do think they are going over owned right now.
Yeah, just like I don't really get it. Like, yes, can Tari Eason just play a bunch more minutes and they take minutes from Smith or Şengün? Yeah, it's been happening. Could the same thing happen for Thompson? Yeah. But like, and look, the prices are crazy compared to FanDuel. 4,700 for Thompson compared to 5,800 on FanDuel. 4,300 for Eason compared to 5,500 on FanDuel. Like, they are great point per dollar plays. But man, oh man, does it scare me to just have like a relatively chalky bench play from Houston against the best defense in the league.
It doesn't feel good.
It really doesn't. It really, really doesn't. Now on the OKC side, basically the whole team's unowned. 6% to Shea on DK. It's around 10 for Shea and Jalen Williams on FanDuel, and absolutely nothing else. I will never mind clicking Shea's name or Jalen Williams' name, but I don't anticipate having much of OKC. This Houston defense is good too.
Yeah, not a ton to like here on the Oklahoma City side either. Wanted to mention Isaiah Joe as a viable contrarian value option. We know Dagnall runs a pretty deep rotation, and it's kind of hard to trust outside of like the top 3 guys. But you have seen 20-plus minutes in each of the last 4 games for Isaiah Joe. And he is someone that, is not afraid to shoot. So I wanted to mention that as a viable contrarian option. But outside of that, there's not really much else. Again, SGA is hitting the most ownership, but 10.1K feels priced about right. You mentioned it. Like, it's not really a good spot against Houston either.
No.
Both defense is solid, so that's really about it.
I've got the OKC defensive rating for today at 110 points per 100 possessions. I would be shocked if I see that number ever be lower than that. It might for OKC when Hartenstein gets back, but like, man, this defense, everybody's good except for like Isaiah Joe. It's crazy.
Yep.
It's
crazy. Yeah, they have a really, really good defense.
And he makes up for his lack of defensive ability by like being a knockdown, dead-eye three-point shooter. So it's pretty nice. I love Oklahoma City. Campaign ruled out. I told you guys this a week ago, or 6 days ago. He was not going to be playing at all this week. The questionable tags have been nonsense. I shouldn't have to have a campaign take, but apparently I had to have one. All right, Miami and Denver. Miami 3-point dogs in Denver, 220 total. Not much coming in here to the Miami side. 8% to Butler on FanDuel, 10% to Bam on DraftKings. Those are the highest marks across both sites. They don't look all that appealing. I thought they might, but you're running into elevation. It's not ideal. I actually have 16% Jimmy Butler, who may be the guy that I've been most under the field on over the course of me doing content in 6 years, much to my chagrin, generally speaking. That was also, those 6 years have been the boom of Jimmy Butler. So it hasn't coincided well for me at all since I told everybody that he wasn't as good as Chris Middleton. Anyway, what do you want to get from Miami?
Not a ton standing out here for Miami. I think Hero will probably be the preferred option coming in around 5% ownership. He's got the shooting guard eligibility, which is kind of nice, sub 7K. If you wanted to click on Bam or Jimmy, I think it's okay. But again, I'm not going to go out of my way to play those guys. Hawkes, I believe, is still questionable. He did participate in a shoot round, though, so I'm expecting him to play. You had seen Larson play 20-plus minutes off the bench each last couple of games without Hawkes, but I'm expecting Hawkes to play. Just wanted to mention that. Really a pretty unappealing team. I think Hero will probably be my favorite play.
Yeah, 6,800 on DK with that point guard, shooting guard eligibility, $500 cheaper than he is on FanDuel. I don't hate that Hero shout at all. I'm going to put this out there again, since not everybody necessarily listens to the strategy show. Here's a little tidbit of information for you guys. Hit the like button before I give it out. Haywood Highsmith, I'm expecting when these guys are mostly at full strength, that his minutes are going to be highly matchup dependent. They deployed him for massive minutes last time out because Kevin Durant was on the opposite side. He is their no doubt about it, he is their best perimeter defender, and it is not close. But you don't really need him all the time, and you can go to these other guys and work everybody in because they're relatively deep. Denver has no perimeter option that you need to go put on lockdown. Michael Porter Jr. is not creating anything any longer, and then you're just fresh out of people. So this doesn't strike me as a Haywood Highsmith day, but pay attention to the days where there's like a prominent wing scorer on the opposite side, because I think you'll see Haywood Highsmith go from like, oh, he played 2 minutes of garbage run to, oh, he played 28. It's something I'm going to pay attention to. We'll see where that goes. Denver Nuggies. 12% ownership to Nikola Jokic on DraftKings, basically unowned on FanDuel at 3%. We've got 20% coming into Michael Porter Jr. and 20% coming into Peyton Watson on FanDuel. Jamal Murray working his way back from the concussion protocol. How do you want to handle Denver here? I mean, Jokic is always a guy who will make you feel really good about clicking on him, but what do you want to do with the chalky MPJ?
Yeah, MPJ ownership feels a little high right now. Jamal Murray, he's questionable with the concussion. I am expecting him to play. If he gets ruled out, then obviously we can look to Westbrook again. And then Julian Strother would get a minutes bump off the bench there too. But I feel like the ownership is a little bit high right now in MPJ. They're in the mid-range. You mentioned Jokic. You can never go wrong clicking Jokic. And he's not getting a ton of love either. Peyton Watson is 4.6. So he started last game for Aaron Gordon, played 34 minutes. Would expect him to start and play similar minutes again, assuming no foul trouble. So I think he's a solid value play, not getting a ton of love right now, coming in around 5%. So I think he's like a decent contrarian value play. But outside of that, assuming Jamal Murray plays, there's nothing else I'm really looking to.
Now I'm with you. I definitely don't want Murray, so I'm sure he'll right the ship for himself because he has been next level dreadful so far this season.
Yeah, he's been really bad.
He's taking like 20% less twos, 20% less threes, 20% reduction to his assist rate. I mean, this guy can't find it right now. Glad they gave him that giant extension before the season started. Portland Trailblazers, 12.5-point dogs in Minnesota, 220 total. The highest owned guy for Portland on DraftKings is 1% to Jeremy Grant. The highest owned guys on FanDuel for Portland is either Jeremy Grant, Anthony Simons, or Denny Avdia at 1%. I have no words for Portland.
Yep, pretty easy team to talk about. Basically a cross-off. I thought there was a chance that Shaedon Sharpe could rest in this game, but he's not in an injury report. So, yeah, tough spot here against Minnesota. Nothing standing out at all. So, basically a cross-off team for me.
Minnesota. Highest owned guy on the DraftKings side is Dante DiVincenzo at 3%. It's a little bit higher on the FanDuel side, 11% to Julius Randle, 6% to Anthony Edwards. Not really getting to the Minnesota side here either. I was expecting them to sit Conley today just because of the Portland matchup on the back-to-back. It was like, just sit the dude and play Dillingham. They didn't do that. So I'm not that interested in Minnesota.
Yeah, I think books were thinking the same thing. They didn't post DiVincenzo props, because that was my thought too. I was going to take some overs on DiVincenzo, but they didn't even post his props. But yeah, Minnesota. I think that you can take shots on some of these guys in the mid range. Naz Reid, 5.7K, 1%. Dante DiVincenzo, 5K, 2%. Those guys, as we talk about always in Minnesota, they're basically running an 8-man rotation. So in competitive games, DiVincenzo is pushing for high 20s minutes. Naz Reid normally in the mid 20s minute range. So I think those two guys are viable contrarian options. But yeah, probably not going to get to anyone else. The price feels right on Randall. Again, Conley, I could see them kind of taking it easy on his minutes on the back-to-back, which is why I mentioned DiVincenzo. So yeah, that's about it for Minnesota. I think just Naz and DiVincenzo is like contrarian options.
And so concludes the DraftKings portion of this show. The next two games that we talk about, 10 o'clock starts, not on the DraftKings main slate. So hit the like button one last time. 2,200 plus people in here. Hit that thumbs up. We got to bump this up for Live Before Lock. I could see Greg waiting in the wings, just crying because the likes aren't high enough. He's a bit of a crier, but you guys get it. Philly, 7-point dogs in Los Angeles, taking on the Lakers, 223 total. The Sixers are now obviously without Joel Embiid for assaulting writers. They are without now Tyrese Maxey, who's going to be out for a week or two. So congratulations, Paul George. This is probably not what you were looking for. Highest owned guy on FanDuel for Philadelphia is 4% to Caleb Martin. I did get 9% of Kelly Oubre Jr., but what I would really like to do is not play the Sixers.
Yeah, no Embiid. No Maxey, still not a ton standing out. Like, I don't know how many minutes Paul George can play. I would say that he's probably still capped around low 30s. And again, looking at that price on FanDuel, kind of tough to go there. Kyle Lowry at 5.2 on FanDuel, I think, is an okay option. Expecting him to move into the starting lineup. So I think he's like a decent contrarian play. Drummond has really been disappointing this year. I thought he would have a better start to the year without Embiid, but he has not played as well as I thought. The rebounding numbers not been great on him either.
No.
So yeah, Lowry I think is a decent play there, assuming he will start. Caleb Martin's playing big minutes, 5.4K. Probably the next guy you would look to. Yabusele's backing up Drummond. If Drummond does get in foul trouble, which is definitely possible against AD, Yabusele would benefit.
Now on the Lakers side, I was fully expecting a long-term Q tag on Anthony Davis for today, but no, just probable. And the only guy getting any love on FanDuel, 14% owned, 11,200, but he has the power forward eligibility. Anthony Davis is in 30% of my lineups. Can't lie. It scares the shit out of me that he's just going to tweak his plantar fasciitis and bail in like 6 minutes. But I'm going to AD right now and not really anything else. A couple shares of LeBron at 9,700.
Yeah, AD's in a really good spot. He should be able to feast here against Drummond. So I like your call going overweight there. Love the upside in him in this spot. Rui was originally questionable, now probable, expecting him to play. Price feels right there. Again, if he surprisingly gets ruled out, Connect would probably start. But again, he is expected to play. LeBron's price too high there on FanDuel. Reeves' price feels too high as well. So I think, I'm in agreement. I think it's 80, and that's it for the Lakers.
And the final game, the LA Clippers, 6.5-point dogs in Sacramento, 223 total. The highest owned guy on the Clippers for FanDuel is 5% to Norm Powell. All of these guys have had their prices stabilize over these first 2 weeks of the season. It's equally as unappealing on the Sacramento side, 3% to DeMar DeRozan. I basically don't have these guys. I have 5% of Norm Powell and 1 share of Domantas Sabonis. You can play Harden, Zubac, Powell, Murray, Sabonis, DeRozan, Fox, but absolutely none of them look like a priority to me.
Yeah, looking at these price points, in agreement. I like the ceiling on Zubac, but again, FanDuel, especially you only have one center. You mentioned Sabonis too. James Harden, 9.8. He's in a decent spot here against the Kings. Again, like the upside on him. He has a pretty high usage plus assist rate as well. Kind of doing everything for the team right now, but again, that price feels about right. So I don't think there's any standouts in this game.
13 up, 13 down, and we did it in 55 minutes. We ran a minute long, but what are you going to do? We had to start a little bit late. DK, tell the people where to find you.
Yeah, so you guys can find me on Twitter. That's going to be DK__DFS, or on YouTube, DK DFS. We're doing DFS and prop content.
All righty. I'm going to do something right now that nobody else wants me to do. Boop, boop. Hey, what's going on, guys?
Wow. You just add me to the thing, I assume?
You're damn right I did.
All right. I wasn't looking at it, but I heard your voice, so I assumed I was added and just dropped onto playback there. So, all right, set there. All right, cool.
I think I just got my pants back on. That's good.
Nice. I'm just checking to see because it doesn't, for whatever reason, going into StreamYard with playback, it doesn't mess up my camera like it does with Zoom. So that's nice.
What a cool story to lead off live before lock.
Well, I got to make sure I don't have to reset
Eric,
everything.
You might have to do this. You might have to take over the mantle for me. Please let everybody know how bad DraftKings Pick 6 has been fumbling the ball a little bit lately.
40% rake is tough to beat. I'm not going to lie. And it's funny because they're the slowest of underdog, prize picks, and Pick 6 to like take down props when news drops. So it's really frustrating because you have to like think about, is the 15% worth it from time to time now? And it's like, I can't believe this is something we're actually thinking about. But yeah, we'll have a conversation, I'm sure, at some point in time. Because I mean, obviously that was the side I played the most on. I'm not going to play the most there anymore. So it's a bummer.
I knew you would be well aware of this situation and have me back. So I appreciate that. But I got to give you guys the floor. It's live before lock time, everybody. Greg, we'll see you in an hour. DK?
Yep.
Enjoy your weekend.
Yep. So Josh and I will be back in an hour on the playback show. But first, we got an hour of Eric and I talking about the slate. And here are the players we are currently waiting for updates on and news as we get started here. Really odd situation with Devin Booker where he was downgraded to questionable and then immediately came out that he's expected to play. So questionable, but expected to play. So that's kind of an odd situation. Jamal Murray, he's questionable in the concussion protocol. I also expect him to be more likely to play than not after the games that he's missed. Draymond Green, he's questionable. Jaime Jaquez Jr. is questionable. Pajemski's questionable. Noah Clowney remains questionable. Adams questionable. The rest of the guys, not really all that important for today. If you guys haven't done it yet, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Eric, what's up with you?
Yeah, ready to rock here. Did a lot of NFL this morning, afternoon. Just been grinding in those streets. And then it's just been 3 straight hours of trying to figure out news and props and everything that I want to be doing here for this slate, because there's a ton going on. And I think we're going to get to play this pretty close to straight up here at this point. There's a lot of value we do not want to pass up here in the first couple of games this time around. So I think that that's going to make this slate pretty easy and one that we should be able to kind of just glide right into lock. You can jump over to playback afterwards, but should be a little bit more chill Friday for a massive slate.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll talk right away about some of that value in the first game, but I mean, before we even get there, just the way I'm looking at the slate, it seems the same for you. You said you just want to be playing it straight up. And I agree. I think there's just value that's really hard to overlook. But from the later games, are you also just assuming guys like Jamal Murray and Devin Booker are going to be playing?
Yeah, I think Jamal Murray, just because it's the first game he gets upgraded to questionable, I usually lean towards those guys being ones that are in. It's also not like going to be a gigantic deal because I don't want to be jamming. I mean, you could not have gotten a better Russell Westbrook game, and obviously the price tag and everything kind of fit in to have it be a perfect storm. But with him at 6,600 now, I don't think anybody was running to the window. I wouldn't want to play him at that tag anyway. A lot different than 5K. It's Miami on the other side too, which, obviously OKC is the best defensive team, and you saw Russell Westbrook go nuts there, but there's a lot of ways that Miami can bring guys on the floor, Haywood Highsmith, guys of that nature that can make life kind of a living hell for him. So it's not going to be something that matters all that much as prices have started to adjust for him being out, Aaron Gordon being out. Really don't see anything I'd want to get to from that injury situation. The Booker one's weird. I don't know what you think about this, but it feels like they're like, hey man, you're actually sick. We got to put you on the injury report. The NBA is cracking down on this stuff. At least they did at the tail end of last year. And he's like, nah, I'm playing. And I think it just could be something where we end up seeing him play very poorly or maybe more limited minutes, but I can't rip anything in that game as is without Devin Booker being out. Like, there's just not a lot that's that appealing with Dallas, even without their best defensive piece and PJ Washington and Derek Lively, those two guys specifically, even with them out, I can't really land on Phoenix unless you get Booker actually sitting.
Yeah, which just based on what we've heard doesn't seem all that likely. And then considering the late start time of the game, it's just not something I really want to be, well, not like that late, but 30 minutes after lock. And then a lot of these other games at the start of the slate having a lot of value in them. I just don't want to leave some of these guys from the first few games out of my lineups, hoping that Devin Booker, who said that he thinks he's going to play, to end up being ruled out. By the way, Eric, I'm going to have to give you a little bit of shit for this. You made fun of me for checking all my settings in playback before we started here. You muted yourself. You're muted in playback.
Fuck.
So yeah, that's why we check the settings, Eric. That's why we got to make sure that everything's up, set, and ready to go. But yeah, just go and unmute yourself, and then we'll be good to go here. Right. Let's start talking about some of that value in the early going of the slate. And actually, if you wouldn't mind, Jacob, could you pull some of the ownership on screen here so we could reference it and show it to the people while we're going through? Because a lot of the value is the super chalk in the early going on this slate as well. And you guys will see it right here where this 7 p.m. Here are the games that are starting at 7. Indiana, Charlotte, Atlanta, Detroit, New Orleans, Orlando. Now look over here at the most highly projected players on the slate as far as ownership goes. Miles Turner in one of those first games on the slate. Brandon Boston, one of the players in the first game on the slate. Benedict Mathurin, same deal. Jeremiah Robinson Earl, Jose Alvarado. So of the most popular players, the majority of them are playing right in that opening game. And I want to know, are there any of these players that are starting early that are chalky that you don't think should be chalk, Eric?
Benedict Matherin's a little bit weird to me, but not, I don't have like some egregious take or anything. I have him in 28% of lineups. He's at 40%. It's more of like, I wish I could get to other things that I think are crazy. I mean, the one that stands out the most that I think I'm just going through each one individually here. I have a lot less Jose Alvarado than 27% Jose Alvarado. I don't know if anybody watched that last game. He went 7 for 7 from 3 in 35 minutes, went absolutely berserk, was as efficient as possible. And now you're going up against, I know it's without Paolo Banchero and Wendell Carter Jr., but the second best defensive rating on dunks and threes here so far this season, the Orlando Magic. Jalen Suggs and him, they're going to go at each other here. Jalen Suggs has a little bit more size on Alvarado, and I can't imagine we're going to get a better Jose Alvarado performance than what we got last time out. But again, if he were to somehow against Orlando in this current iteration of Orlando have a decent game, wouldn't be something that I would be, oh, you can't believe people played a 25% Jose Alvarado. What a world to live in. Like, it's fine. I get it. I think those would be the two that, just because they're at like mid 5K tags, that I could see them failing and running into some problems. But I don't have anybody else that I'm egregiously against. Do you?
Not really. The ownership on Turner does seem high, but at the same time too, how many times have we seen so far this season? It's been basically every single slate. The highest owned projected players don't end up being as highly owned as they end up being projected. So like if Miles Turner was actually going to be over 50% owned, I might look at that and be like, that seems pretty high for Miles Turner. But I think based on what we've seen so far this year, probably comes in like closer to 40%.
I'm with you.
So other than that, though, Brandon Boston, super popular. I'm around even with the field. I don't have any like insane stands on these chalk guys. Like there isn't one of these ones that like I'm trying to think of like some of the other crazy chalk that we've had, like Bobby Portis. There's not like one guy who it's like, oh, well, Bobby Portis is projected to be really popular and I have him in 100% of my lineups. I mean, like my most rostered players, it's like Jeremiah Robinson Earl in about half my lineups, Miles Turner, Brandon Boston, but like I don't have anybody who's like 90+% of lineups or anything like that today.
Nor do I. No.
All right. So we just got Gary Trent. He has been ruled out. Draymond Green, game time decision. Giannis, he will play. I guess the one guy who is on the injury report that is potentially going to create the most value, I think that Draymond Green's very live to sit, Eric. I don't know about your stance on Draymond, but he's maybe the one guy we should talk about some sort of contingency scenarios of what we want to get to if Draymond is out, now that we've got news that he's officially going to be a game time decision, because he is somebody who I could realistically see sitting. Do you feel the same way? And then if he is out, what would you be trying to get to from Golden State, if anything?
I think he's much more live to play than you do, it seems. I'm probably more like 65-35 he plays. It's a right knee contusion. I think with a veteran like this, if you were just going to give him the day off for maintenance, and if he were actually dinged up to a place where he wasn't going to play, I think you would have ruled him out earlier in the day. That's kind of my main take here, is that it's not anything like maybe he warms up and, you know, the knee is still kind of locked up on him. He just banged knees or something. And that's kind of the issue going on. For me, when you get some of these vets that just don't get ruled out immediately, like we would have known, I think, this morning if he wasn't very live to play, in my opinion. So I think I'm going to just keep him in here until we get that news. It's half an hour after lock. And then, I mean, the value that it could potentially add, I mean, it's still an 11-man rotation if you remove him. I mean, they're playing 12 guys deep routinely. I think if Kyle Anderson were to start at 3,600, that would be awfully fun. They've kind of made it known that they don't want to start Kuminga. Plus, with Steph Curry back, kind of a shooting-dependent 4 isn't exactly what I'm looking to roster on this slate. So for me, I am more likely that Draymond Green is playing. And does it create a ton of value against Cleveland with 11 guys playing? I still think it would be extremely thin.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm not saying I think Draymond sits. I think it's like 50-50, and he's the one guy who, if he's out, it could change stuff. I think it probably shores up the minutes a little bit for Trace Jackson Davis, but what will be most important to me, and you touched on it there, I think Kyle Anderson starts if Draymond ends up sitting. We've seen Kyle Anderson get a little bit more extended run in some recent games. He played really well the last game. I don't know if you saw, there was that sequence that went viral. He had 3 threes in a row. I think it was on 3 consecutive possessions, which does that mean all that much for his production today? No, not really, except I think that the Warriors are starting to look at Kyle Anderson as somebody who they want to be a bigger piece of the rotation.
Well, he should be. He's been good everywhere. Memphis, my Minnesota Timberwolves last year. I mean, I love Kyle Anderson. I always have. For people who don't know, he was a point guard at UCLA back in the day. He's played the 4 basically his entire NBA career. He is extremely versatile. He doesn't need to have the ball in his hands, but when he does have the ball in his hands, he goes out and creates. He's generally one of the best defenders in terms of ranking. He's always upper 90th percentile because even though he's quote unquote slow-mo, he does so many good things. He's so long and lanky. And, you know, he was probably one of the steals of the draft back in, it was like 2013 or 2014 when he got drafted forever ago. He went at the tail end of the first round. He was like the 30th, 31st pick. And I mean, I've just always had a thing for Kyle Anderson. I think he's extremely talented and one of the better like bench players you could have in the NBA. It is not shocking that he's playing as well as he is in some of these spots. So yeah, Kyle Anderson, if he ends up out there, awesome. From a fantasy perspective, it can be hit and miss, especially on a team like Golden State where Buddy Hield and Steph Curry are going to get your usage every single time. Moses Moody every time he touches on the floor. But no doubt he would be an interesting value option if that were to fall that way.
Yeah, let me make sure that we don't have, no super chats have come in. As far as questions, we did have Chris Williams gift out 5 YouTube memberships. It was always, Chris, thank you very much for supporting the channel. We appreciate you. And for anybody else that wants to support the channel, the easiest way to do it is just take 5 seconds of your time. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Follow us if you haven't already. These are things that help us in the YouTube algorithm, and it only takes a half second of your time. Easiest way for you to support us here. We just got news that Noah Clowney, he is going to be available to play today. So maybe that caps the ceiling of like Nick Claxton's minutes. Ben Simmons, he will play today. He will sit tomorrow. And now I'll check to make sure that we don't have anything. Yeah, a couple questions in Discord here. And if you guys do have any questions and you're in the Discord channel, one of the perks being a Stokastic sub, you get access to that Discord. You get to ask us questions whenever you want. And we've got a couple of ones in here. First is from Hey, I'm Drew. He wants to know his normal question, Eric. Who are the cash game locks for today? And then also a follow-up to that, he wants to know, is a low-priced center like Kada or someone from Detroit making it? All right, so first, let's address the first part of the question. Who are the cash game locks today? Who are the guys that he just has to be playing in a cash game lineup for DraftKings?
You have to play Miles Turner. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You have to play Jeremiah Robinson Earl. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You have to play Brandon Boston. You have to play Benedict Mathurin. You've got to play Jaren Jackson Jr. more than likely. And then it gets interesting. I'm a pretty big fan of playing Scottie Pippen Jr. in this spot on the Memphis spot in cash rather than Jose Alvarado. I don't think if Alvarado doesn't go completely nuclear last game at 5,700 with Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, like there's a lot of ways where I just think you would probably want to, you'd probably want to get away from it. But with Zion out, with Trey Murphy out, with Jordan Hawkins out, with Herbert Jones out, I get it if you wanted to play him in cash if you need the money, but like I really like Scottie Pippen Jr. in this spot. We have a much better optimal percentage on him as well in the boom bust tool. So for me, I think Scottie Pippen probably the other guard that I would be utilizing in that spot. How about you?
I like both Pippen and Alvarado for cash. Those are two players that I haven't built out a lineup right now or anything like that, but I don't have any disagreements any of the players you said. But if possible, I'd say probably Alvarado and Scottie Pippen would both be in it.
Agreed.
Scottie Pippen's been good this year. I mean, even last year, he looked good from a fantasy perspective, but this season, he's been like a real asset for Memphis. Then, of course, John Morant, he's out, fell and hurt his hip the other day. So, yeah. And then if you
I've
look
been impressed at how well they play on the floor together. That's what's been fun is like, it's not a pure backup point guard role like it was in the past at times. John Morant was almost out for the entire year last year, but I didn't know how well they would share the floor together. And it seems to be something that they have some decent cohesion. And if Pippen's going to be this good for them, that is just, that is a find. He's been really, really nice for the last year and a half.
The one that is kind of fringy for me, I'd say if you have him, cool, but you maybe don't need him. Brandon Ingram is clearly in a good spot with Zion being ruled out, but he's really been priced up at $8,400. But then you consider the other players who have for the Pelicans, right? No CJ McCollum. There's no DeJounte Murray. A lot of the load on offense is going to fall on Brandon Ingram. I'm going to have exposure to him. It looks like about even with the field for GPP purposes. For cash games, I would say it's nice if you could fit him in, but maybe don't necessarily need him just because the price point has already kind of taken into account some of those injuries. But he's somebody else who I'd say like kind of on the fringes, Brandon Ingram at that mid 8K price tag for cash.
Yeah, absolutely. He's fringy. I think I just built out what I think the lineup would look like in this event too. I kind of need $400 and it's landing on Franz Wagner. Again, you might have one piece in cash that just doesn't look right, I would say at times, where you're not going to get every single highly projected player potentially in every single lineup every single day. Like there's a iteration where I think you probably go Turner, Batadze, but I think I'd probably be inclined to play 3 point guards. Cade Cunningham at 8,700, I think looks really good for cash. Jose Alvarado, Scottie Pippen, we talked about there. Again, the Alvarado one, I'm more willing to part with to a certain extent, but like, I do think you probably end up going 3 point guards and then Goga probably on the outside looking in. He's a fine play and he's fine for cash if you want to go the double center route, which is generally what you end up doing on DK. But Turner lock, Boston lock, Mathurin lock, Scottie Pippen would be a lock for me, I think. There's a lot of cool iterations of cash today.
Yeah, and then Hey, I'm Drew wants to know would a low price center like Kada make it into the lineup? No, not today, just because there are other centers that like you need to have Miles Turner and Kada just kind of a no at this point, at least not for cash games. And then he wants to know, would someone from Detroit make it in? So for the Pistons, there's going to be no Jalen Duren for today. If you were playing somebody from Detroit, I agree with Eric. I think the most likely person would be Cade Cunningham. There are guys that get exposure to this team for GPPs. I'm kind of surprised Isaiah Stewart isn't more popular. He's very low owned. I like being overweight to him in tournaments in the absence of Duren. He's
I
somebody
like
who could
Paul
play
Reed
extra
for
minutes.
tournaments today.
There are guys I get overweight to the field to from Detroit for GPPs. Tobias Harris, Cade Cunningham, Isaiah Stewart. I don't know that I play any of them in a cash game, though.
I like Paul Reed for tournaments today, but we'll get there.
Okay. I mean, we're talking about Detroit right now. I
Sure.
understand why he's good. He's a good fantasy producer.
Exactly.
But it's he's in the same situation now that he found himself in Philadelphia. It's like, why is this guy not getting minutes? He's legitimately good. It's just hard to rely on him getting the playing time. But I kind of could understand what your logic is going to be, which is if he gets the minutes, which is very possible considering how shorthanded they are. He's very cheap. He's a good fantasy producer. I guess the question just becomes, what is your expectation for his playing time?
Yeah, I just think it's going to be a hot hand approach potentially. I think that's kind of, these are the chances that you want to kind of take in tournaments at times when you have a really good fantasy producer and there isn't like a clear cut order of which this has to play out. Like they ended up giving Paul Reed money leading into this year. Of course, that's led to him playing 12 minutes so far this season. Way to go, guys. Way to go and run that front office if you're Detroit. I mean, I do like that they at least found some basketball players in Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr. They're trying different stuff for Cade Cunningham. They're still a couple of years away. I don't think anybody's saying that they're going to be good anytime soon, but I do think with a guy like Paul Reed, you're a good fantasy producer. And if Beef Stew comes out of the gate and doesn't play very well, I mean, we're talking about a guy who's going to pull double-digit ownership. And there's no reason that if Paul Reed comes out in the first rotation and plays well, that they don't just play more Paul Reed in a spot like this. It's Atlanta on the other side too, so we get a pace up. We get a lot of opportunities for both of these guys where I'm not saying you should play them together and just say 48 minutes of the center spot because you're looking for that upside, but 3,600 for Paul Reed. If you were to just go 24-24 with the center minutes, which I think is probably not the most likely outcome by any means, but like there's lots of ways for a 3,600 Paul Reed to walk into more minutes potentially and win you a tournament in a spot like this. And he's just sub 4K. We don't have a ton of value here. A lot of the value people are jamming is like upper fours. Jeremiah Robinson-Earl at 3,500 looks great. I definitely like him, but he's got power forward eligibility. I think Paul Reed's at least interesting to get into some lineups. Don't play him in like 20% or anything, but like, I think he's just really, really sneaky. And I'm shocked nobody's been talking about him today.
We don't have him projected poorly. We have him projected for right around 20 fantasy points, if I'm not mistaken. The number is, actually more than that. We've got him projected for 21 fantasy points.
Love.
But the problem is even 21 fantasy points isn't enough for him to land in my lineups just because of how loaded the center position is.
It is.
So I agree with you. There's an upside there, but there are so many centers with upside that he's just not really making the cut for my lineups.
I get it. I'm kind of looking at it with some of these lineups that are looking chalkier to me in the Sims tool as I'm favoriting, as I'm going through and specifically picking out which ones I want to use in 20 max, which ones I want to put in my 150 set, kind of like figuring out exactly where I want to disperse them with the entry manager. Like, I think I'm still going to end up with like 8-10% of him when it's all said and done. We'll see. We'll see if any other news breaks here too. I would like to see this New Orleans starting lineup. Has that come through yet?
Pelicans
Nope.
Starters. Let me check. I didn't see it come through on my phone while we were doing this.
I'm ready.
Yeah,
I'm ready
no
for
starting
some
lineup confirmed yet.
Yeah, I'm ready for some BS from them. That's for sure.
I mean, I'm assuming Alvarado, Boston, Ingram, Jeremiah Robinson-Earl, and Nisi again.
Yep. Get a haircut this week. What's wrong with my hair? I'm wearing a hat, bro. What are we doing here?
Cut your hat off. Cut your hat off. I do have a kind of Paul Reed-ish center that I like for GPPs today. He's somebody who I have just not enjoyed watching at all this year, but he clearly has fantasy upside. Zach Edey. There are going to be matchups where he just plays absolute garbage teams and has just nobody's guarding him, where he's going to be a really good points per minute fantasy producer. The problem with Zach Edey is he is so slow and immobile on defense. I was messaging Josh a bit about this the other day while I was watching him play. He's just a turnstile on defense. So when they were playing the Lakers, LeBron kept getting switches on to Zach Edey, and it was layup after layup after layup. I think LeBron got 3 layups in a row getting switches on Zach Edey. Memphis had to pull him out of the game, and he didn't go back in until garbage time. So that's a really, like, a lot of good players are just going to play Zach Edey off the court. Here's the matchup he has today, though. It's the Washington Wizards. This might be the worst team in the NBA, and they just don't have good players that I think are going to be able to exploit his weaknesses. So in the same ways that you're looking at Paul Reed as an upside guy, I think Zach Edey, like exact same sort of like uncertainty with his minutes. But Zach Edey, if you tell me that they leave him on the court because Washington isn't able to exploit him, like 25 minutes of Zach Edey against the Wizards, that could be like 40 fantasy points.
Yeah. J-Val probably going to get some minutes to try to guard him here. I'm curious to see Washington's starting lineup if they put J-Val out there to kind of combat that potentially. I know somebody saying, and Josh talked about that in the chat. Josh said not to play Edey, Greg. I didn't hear that part of the show.
It's not a hot take to say don't play Edey. Nobody's playing him. He's very low owned. Yeah,
and that's kind of what I'm looking at. He's 4,700, and we just saw what he did. He reminds me, he's the perfect example. We've all had this if you've played competitive basketball at any point. That one 6'11 farm kid. I'm from South Dakota, so yeah, it's always like a 6'11 farm kid, and he gets to go up against a bunch of like 6'1 8th graders, and he just grabs the ball, turns, puts it in the basket, runs the other way. Can't guard anybody. Just put him underneath the hoop. That's literally Zach Edey out there in the NBA. But there are teams that are going to be able to combat him with just having another big guy. How big? I mean, J-Val is huge. What is J-Val's? I know he's over 7 feet. I'm just wondering like how thick he is. Don't quote me on that. I shouldn't have said that, but whatever. Washington.
By the way, he's not over 7 feet.
He is 7 foot on the dot, 255. He's a big dude. That's a big body.
Oh,
big
I looked him up and he was listed at 6'11", 265. To Eric's point, though, yeah, he's pretty thick, Eric.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking at dunks and threes. They have him at 7 foot, 255.
That's not what Google has him at. Let's see.
Google is a damn dirty liar. Look at dunks and threes.
Let me go to, what does ESPN have him at? ESPN has him at 6'11". Who cares? What does an inch matter when you're that thick, though, right?
Well, you ask your wife.
What does it matter? Let's see. I saw a John Moran update, but it's not pertinent for today, so it doesn't matter. Yeah, but anyway, like as Zach Edey, I have him in 14% of lineups. I think he's an interesting GPP play as far as good points per minute fantasy producers go. Let's get to some of the other questions that are in here. We went over some of the important players for cash games. We talked about a couple contrarian GPP options we like. So let's answer the rest of our outstanding questions, Eric, and then we'll do the nuke of the night. Question here. This is from Jalin Verse. He wants us to rank our top 3 spend ups for a FanDuel GPP. All right, so FanDuel GPP spend ups. Let me favorite my top FanDuel lineups. What do we want to consider spend up? 8K and above?
Yes.
All right. So if we're going 8K and above on FanDuel, which I picked that price point for a reason, because that would include Brandon Ingram, who I think is very important over on FanDuel with the small forward, power forward eligibility. Brandon Ingram, SGA. I like SGA as a contrarian option on FanDuel, only 10% owned. And Tyrese Halliburton. Halliburton's only $8,100 on FanDuel. He's not crazy popular. And now also you've got TJ McConnell out, which is going to, I assume, mean the ball even more so in the hands of Tyrese Halliburton. He struggled a little bit to open up this season from a fantasy perspective. If you guys remember last year, Halliburton through the first couple months of the year was like as good as it got as a fantasy producer. He got hurt, and then they did this weird thing where the second half of the year, just so that he would be eligible for postseason accolades, they had him playing like 18 minutes per game for a while, just so that he would accumulate the games played. And I think that kind of screwed up how healthy he was down the stretch of the season. But I mean, that aside, $8,100, he has not been quite the same since that injury last year. But I do think he's going to be getting it going eventually. He's been too good of a player in the past. And $8,100 in a matchup against Charlotte with TJ McConnell out, I really like Halliburton, particularly on FanDuel. And also, he's got point guard and shooting guard eligibility, which is a little bit weird. So those are the 3 8K plus guys for me. Do you have anybody you would add to that, Eric?
No, I was just going to piggyback off of Tyrese Halliburton, what you were saying there. I love the kid, Iowa State guy. I have not been on Tyrese Halliburton on one slate this entire year. You have not heard me advocate for him. This is going to be the first one. Even 8,100 over on DK, I think, is a really good spot here going up against Charlotte, LaMelo Ball on the other side of this one. Tyrese Halliburton, I'm still pretty positive his shoulder is screwed up. Do you know what he's shooting from 3 this season, Greg?
It's not great. Yes. It wasn't great in the second half of last year either.
Yeah, I think his shoulder's still screwed up because he's been abysmal. 8 for 39. That is 20.5% from 3 here. That is on the road there. Here, 27%. There we go. 27% from 3, 17 for 63. He's been abysmal shooting, but we got to look at the assists. We got to look at the double-double bonus on DK. We got to look at a lot of different things for Tyrese Halliburton. And getting TJ McConnell out, we've been on TJ McConnell on a couple of slates here on this show, that's for sure. I think with him out, Tyrese Halliburton looks a lot different because it's minutes that aren't going to necessarily get poached by him or anything there. I feel pretty confident that at 8,100, he's one of the best tournament plays at current ownership.
Pierre wants to know our favorite players at each position for FanDuel GPP. Yeah, so we already got these lineups in front of me right now. I'll go position by position. Do you have FanDuel lineups built out? If not, I'll just do the ones I like the most at each position.
I'm playing both. I can tell you quick.
Okay, so we'll just go back and forth. Starting at point guard, Scottie Pippen Jr. for me.
By a mile, I have 100%.
Shooting guard, that is Brandon Boston for me.
Brandon Boston by a mile.
Small forward, Brandon Ingram.
Franz Wagner.
Power forward, that would also be Brandon Ingram for me. So then I will go down to Franz Wagner.
It is Jaren Jackson Jr.
And then at center, that is Miles Turner for me.
Miles Turner.
All right. So there we're pretty much on the same page with a lot of those guys there. Then we've got Dahmer 707 wants to know, do we like Luke Kennard for tournaments today, Eric?
No. I think Luke Kennard is useful for my guy Scottie Pippen today. I think just having a knockdown shooter, somebody that helps spread the floor a little bit, help with that assist rate, and it's obviously Washington on the other side. But 3,200, I just don't see I don't see him getting up to like 22 minutes even in a spot like this. And I don't think with the number of guys that are still going to be priorities in terms of the usage, Jalen Wells has been pretty good for them. Jake LaRavia has been awesome off the bench. They've lots of nice pieces, I think, this season. Even I keep bringing it up. Jay Huff keeps continuing to just impress me every time I turn on a game. He went berserk in like 14 minutes against the Lakers. I mean, I really like a lot of these pieces for Memphis, but the big problem with that is that kind of just consolidates what his minutes upside could be. Sure, he could go out and knock down 5-6 threes, but you probably still don't need him because he's not going to add a lot else in the box score.
Yeah, I don't have any lineups with Luke Kennard. There's enough value, and it's a big enough slate where I don't think you have to go quite that deep to somebody like a Luke Kennard. Right. So not for me. We've got Charlie Oliver wants to know thoughts on Franz Wagner in cash. He's not somebody I'd say is a must play in cash games, but he's certainly a viable option, especially if you're filling out a lineup. I mean, this team just has nothing on offense with Paulo Banchero out. So much of the onus falls on Franz Wagner. I remember looking at some of his props this morning. They're insane. Like his over-under is like 25.5 points. He's got massive numbers, and it kind of just has to be because who else is shooting the ball on this team other than Wagner? Ball being Jalen Suggs' hands a little bit. So, yeah, for cash games, not a must play, but yeah, strong option.
Yeah, not only just strong option. I brought it up before. He's like cash consideration for me. I like him a lot more even than what is projected. We'll get into some numbers about him and another player of his on his team, the Nuke of the Night.
Ooh, and by the way, before we get to the Nuke of the Night, Mr. Biggs wants to know, is it a good time? He didn't even ask who is the Viagra play of the day. He was just like, guys, is it a good time for the Viagra play of the day? So I will say this. If Eric had a sense of humor about him, he'd go to Jonas Valanciunas after the comments he made before. But Eric, who's going to rise up today and make your night Viagra play of the day?
Oh, hell yeah, Jay Val. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. If I had a sense of humor, leave me alone. I'm funny in my own mind, or I think. I won't call him Nuke in the Night, but somebody's going to rise up that isn't necessarily kind of being looked at as like we haven't talked about Tari Eason yet. I mean, Tari Eason is an awesome fantasy producer from time to time. I think he's an awesome tournament play on today's slate. I'm surprised to see his ownership hasn't come up throughout the day. Sitting at 16.5% ownership over on DK. I have a lot more than 16.5%. That feels like a pretty good quality of somebody that's going to rise up. Give me Tari Eason.
Boy, let me see. Who am I overweight to? All right, I'll bring him up here. I want to use him as the Nuke of the Night, though, too. This is what gets hard. What's hard about some of the bits? Hard, no pun intended. But because I want to find out who it is that I want to use here. But all right, I'll do him as the Viagra play. Tobias Harris has been a really good rebounder for the Detroit Pistons this year. He hasn't had a massive role on offense or anything like that, but I think the potential for his rebound upside with Duren out today is really high for Tobias Harris. And then maybe also we see some small ball lineups from the Pistons where they go really, what happened? Oh,
We're
wow.
starting Salon from Charlotte. Everybody
Hornets
down to the
starting
beauty
lineup.
salon.
Ball,
Let's
Miller,
go.
Green, Salon, and Gibson. What a stupid front court that is.
So Salon's already been in this lineup. He's already been like a rotational piece. He's a pretty highly touted pick. I mean, there were a lot of people talking about how good he was in the preseason. I watched him a couple of times. Hasn't been that impressive so far, but like 3K is 3K, bro. And he's starting here. God, is that a disturbing piece to have thrown into the mix? And also makes me wonder because like, I think this is just like Charlotte knowing that they have no front court depth and they want to play Grant Williams at some 5 because they have to play Grant Williams at some 5. I mean, Miles Turner, congratulations, collect your prize. You're playing a 39-year-old Taj Gibson already, followed by a backup 6'7" center. What a time to be alive if you're Miles Turner here. Like Pascal Siakam a little bit more here too. But yeah, we have a 3K small forward, power forward eligible dude in Salon. If he plays like 24 minutes, I would really, I mean, this is an absurd piece to just get thrown into the middle here.
Yeah, I'm going to look up some of his fantasy production. So if you guys are
Not
curious why it is that he's starting, well, Bridges is out because he had a knee injury the other day. And if I remember, I think he like briefly returned to the game. Maybe I'm remembering that incorrectly. And then all of a sudden he was out for an extended period of time. But let's see. What do we had from him from a fantasy perspective? Oh, boy. He's been a very shitty fantasy producer, Eric. Small sample size, but he is like 0.5 fantasy points per minute.
But it's such a small sample size. He's a rookie. It's really hard to get that production to like really calibrate until later down the line. Even if you make like a 0.7 fantasy point per minute guy, 0.8 fantasy point per minute guy, he's flat 3K with multi-positional eligibility who's starting on a bad Charlotte team with an up-tempo Indy team on the other side. I think if you were to drop him into a game environment where he could be useful, this one is obviously far more useful than most. So like, again, I'm not saying this or overreacting in like a way. It's more of just a headache because he is a flat 3K. Otherwise, we wouldn't even have to have a conversation. Even if we were like 3,700, like Josh Green is, we would not have to have this conversation, but we kind of do.
So we have him projected for 0.6 fantasy points per minute, and that was with him assumed coming off the bench. So if that comes down a little bit, I'm just right now making some assumptions when we have an update, which is probably going to come in like a minute or two here. We had him projected for 12 fantasy points in 20 minutes. If his points per minute fantasy rate is going to go down as a starter, but his minutes are going to go up, I don't know. I think we're going to have him projected for like 28 minutes and like mid-teens fantasy points.
Okay, that's fair. That's fine. I mean, at least we got the New Orleans lineup that's normal. That's really the one that I was waiting for. We got the exact iteration that we were hoping for. Ownership ran through the Pacers news. My God, I love Jordan Wagner. I just want to give him a shout out. Sorry, Jason, my guy.
I was going to say,
Jason is awesome. No, I just came across the screen here. I'm doing a bunch of things. 24.7 minutes. He's literally giving us the breakdown. Absolutely love. That's not going to put him into like more than a couple of lineups in 150. I am playing 150, so he's going to make that set of it where it would be ridiculous not to have a little bit of a 3K guy who's starting that could walk into 30 minutes out of the middle of nowhere. We don't have any precedent. He's starting out of the middle of nowhere. And if Grant Williams isn't going to share the floor right from the beginning here with Taj Gibson, I got to assume they want to try to stagger some of those minutes and have him be the backup 5 and not have too much court time together. So there's a 28, 30-minute potential there to flat 3K. It's at least in play now.
All right. So some news that just came in. Not that's going to change anything, but it's things we need to be kept apprised of. Devin Booker in. Draymond Green also in. Not going to have to make any changes for that. But now that we've got, I'm going to rerun everything now that Salon is starting, obviously. I'm skeptical he's going to make his way into very many lineups, though, because we've got him in there 25 minutes. That still comes him in with less than 15 fantasy point projection. Maybe he's in a lineup or two across 150, but this is not a priority in any kind of way, which I thought could be the case once I looked up what his points per minute rate was. He's cheap. If you want to have him in a lineup, I'm not going to tell you guys that it's incorrect or anything, but I wouldn't play him in cash games and I wouldn't prioritize him.
No, neither of those things. It's more of just like, I didn't really want to have to deal with another piece from that game, but I'm going to throw in a couple of them there. The main thing I was pointing out was New Orleans, the exact lineup we were expecting, getting Alvarado, Brandon Boston, Brandon Ingram, Jeremiah Robinson, Earl, and Missy. So at least we don't have to change anything for that.
All right, so let's see if there was anything else because a bunch of starting lineups came in. Pistons starting lineup, it's important just to read this off because Duran's out. It is Cunningham, Ivy, Hardaway Jr., Tobias Harris, and Isaiah Stewart. And then you mentioned that we got that Pelicans starting lineup, which is as expected. So now let's just follow up on the rest of these questions in Discord, and then we will hit up the nuke of the night from each of us. We've got Einstein asked, do we have any interest in Jordan Poole today? Eric, is it going to be a pool party night?
No.
It's crazy how the perception, like Jordan Poole was so bad at the start of last year. He's been great this year. Either he's just been better compared to the start of last year. This Wizards team just absolutely sucks though. But Poole's kind of expensive because of how he started the season. He's not making his way into my lineups as of now.
Also, there's some really good pieces. I know Draymond Green went on his complete rant about how good Carrington. Carrington's just nice. That kid is actually very, very nice. And I think it's going to be fun to watch some of these young pieces develop. They do have Brogdon and Kuzma that are out right now. Again, if Brogdon gets back at some point, maybe that can help out, and he'll help develop guys like Carrington, who has looked really, really good to me so far. The Davis fellow as well at times. But overall, definitely going to be a spot where, it's definitely going to be a spot here with Washington where Jordan Poole, he's good now. He's going to be all right now, but like he's still a bad basketball player in real life. Eventually, that wears off as your team gets better.
Next question here is from The Process. Wants to know, how do I like Isaiah Stewart today? Yeah, I like Isaiah Stewart as a GPP option. Starting in place of Duran, only pulling 15% ownership. I'm a little bit less than double the field on him, but certainly one of the guys I'm overweight to tonight.
Sean Muller, what are you talking about? No, he was not out. Yeah, he was. Zion Williamson got ruled out forever ago, didn't he?
Yeah, Zion got
literally
ruled
forever
out.
ago. You go in timeout. You are wrong, sir. Actually, I haven't put anybody in timeout in like a year. He's not worth it. This person isn't. It's fine.
Zion was ruled out at, a little bit over an hour ago. Zion's out.
Forever ago. I'm saying that we had our projected of what we thought the lineup was going to be. I'm glad they didn't do any kerfuffery or anything ridiculous because it was good to get exactly what we were projecting out. Mainly Jeremiah Robinson Earl needed it. That's who needed to be started.
Larson 407 wants to know, do I feel differently about Kata in cash on FanDuel versus DK? No. Play Miles Turner. You can only play one center in cash on FanDuel. That guy should be Miles Turner.
Miles Turner is the lock of cash game centers.
D. Wibben says, Josh said don't play Edie. All right, well, fuck him. I'm playing some Zach Edey. I hope he now.
Tune
I
into
really
the playback.
Yeah, because fuck him. That's why. Yeah, so now I really hope that's.
Oh God, what Chappelle? I was watching some old like Chappelle stuff about whatever from this week from the election. It was just so fantastic. Chappelle is a god.
Yeah, I haven't watched some of his old stand-up specials in a while. Those ones are really good, like Killing Him Softly. JEW says, this is more of an office hours question, but how do you deal with the guys that you want to boost throughout the new updates? Do you just redo them each time you remember we wanted to do to get away from a stock run? It's kind of hard to say because it depends what the news updates are, right? Because oftentimes the news updates totally change who it is that I want to boost. Like, let's say, for instance, that Eric and I both thought Devin Booker was going to be out. Like, we got the word that Devin Booker was expected to play, but if Devin Booker was downgraded to questionable and then we didn't get the report right afterwards that he said he was expected to play, I would have been under the assumption that Booker wasn't playing tonight, and I would want to be backloading my lineups for that. If the news then came out that Devin Booker said that he was expecting to play, well, then I would no longer want to backload my lineups for that news. So there's not like one answer, JEW. Like whenever news breaks, it always changes everything that I want to do with the slate.
Agreed. Everything you said is right.
Zach Attack wants to know, does Cody Martin not starting hurt his projection? He was getting to him on FanDuel $4,300. Yes. Yeah,
you shouldn't play Cody Martin.
Yeah. It's just less potential minutes for him.
Yeah, he's toast now. You should just have zero.
Stokes wants to know, who's the best pay up option on DK tonight? 8,500 and above. Yeah, good question. Let me see. Who's the guy 8,500 and above? My lineups are pretty balanced on DraftKings today.
Mine are too. The one I have the most is Cade Cunningham.
Me too. And I have 28% of him right now. I'm about to rerun everything for for the starting lineups that just came in and the updated ownership. But yeah, I don't have any like real studs. And I'm like, oh, I need like 40% of Giannis. Or I will say that if Murray ends up sitting, I might regret that I don't have more of Jokic, but I'm building my lineups as if Murray is going to be in. But yeah, 85 and above, the one I have the most of is Cade. Seems Eric's on the same page, and I don't have like a ton of Cade. Second most for me is LaMelo, and I have less than 20% of him. Who's the one you have the second most of, Eric?
Pull that up here now. I'm just trying to get everything the way that I want it. The second most owned I have, I know it isn't LaMelo Ball. Like LaMelo Ball was not showing up unless I boosted him, which would be the case. 8,500 or above on DK. The next most is Nikola Jokic.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's totally reasonable. He's the third most for me. I will, if we heard right now that Jamal Murray was out, then all of a sudden Jokic would be my most rostered player, who is 8,500 and above. But Eric and I both on the same page. We think that Jamal Murray is going to be playing today. And that has us all caught up on questions in Discord. We got one more question here from Sean. So let's answer this question, okay. Eric. It's a super chat. And then we'll do the nuke of the night here. Sean wants to know, who are we getting to the most exposure to for each position on DraftKings? All right, so we answered this question for FanDuel before. Now we'll do it for TK. So same deal, going back and forth, Eric. Do you have things set? Or are you running a sim right now?
I'm running one more sim here, but
okay. We're probably about on the same page, so I'll just okay, answer right here the question for Sean. Point guard for me is Scottie Pippen Jr. Shooting guard for me, it is Brandon Boston. Small forward for me, that is Benedict Mathurin. Power forward for me, Jeremiah Robinson Earl. And then center for me, that is Miles Turner.
Beautiful.
You ready to do the nuke of the night, or do you need a second for your stuff?
I'm all set. I'm ready. It's done.
All right, Jacob, play the animation. All right, Eric, there you have it. You have had your penis blown off by the nuclear weapon that blew up right in between your legs. And now it's time to hear from you and know, who is your nuke of the night today?
It not is. Be my guy. It's not. It's not. It better not be. Well, I told you it was on the Magic. And Franz Wagner. Okay, yeah, Franz Wagner is looking good. 1.15 DraftKings points per minute. But you know who's a little bit better? Jalen Suggs. Jalen Suggs is cheaper. He doesn't have as good of positionality here, but I'm trying actively to bring down some Jose Alvarado, who I think ends up a little bit overowned on today's slate. The more and more I go through it, I'm playing it in single entry, playing it in 3 max, and I'm going to be well over 8. What is his current ownership? Just to double check where we're at. He's now at 9.96% ownership. He's sub 10% owned. I have him for 43 fantasy points. I don't know what people are looking at for his rates, but he's going to have usage that's going to be sitting right around 25%, sitting at 23.7% in 144 minutes with Paulo Banchero off the floor this season. From a ball handling perspective, this is a guy that they gave a bunch of money to, and Franz Wagner has the highest assist rate, 149 minutes with Paulo Banchero off the floor at 31.4%. But you got to remember, Jalen Suggs isn't that far behind at 28%, and Jalen Suggs continues to impress. He got paid, again, $30 million per year for a reason. He's always been a good defender, but like with Paulo off the floor, they're going to need him to continue to assert himself here in spots like this. And we just got done with a 5-game road trip that I am positive has suppressed the ownership of all of these Orlando Magic. They played 5 games consecutively on the road: Chicago, Cleveland, Dallas, OKC, Indy. It went horribly wrong. They finally get back home and they get to take on this hodgepodge New Orleans team that doesn't even look like the normal New Orleans team either. This is an awesome opportunity to be overweight across the board. I like Goga for tournaments to some extent, although he's the one I'm getting to the least. I love Franz Wagner and Jalen Suggs, but Jalen Suggs at ownership, my nuke of the night.
Yeah, so for myself, I thought this guy was going to be uber chalk when we got the news that Ja Morant was going to be out. And that's Scottie Pippen Jr., who I just read off my most rostered players at each position. And at point guard, it was Scottie Pippen. And it's not like he's unowned or anything like that. We've got him pulling 24% ownership right now. But I think he should be way more popular than that. You guys could see right here. Yeah, 25 is the new number. It was 24 last time I looked at it a couple of minutes ago. he should be way more popular than that. No John Morant. The ball is constantly going to be in Scottie Pippen's hand. We've also seen in the past, at times when Scottie Pippen started a point guard for this team, and I know they were crazy shorthanded last year, there's a crazy high minute ceiling for him in this spot in a great matchup against the Washington Wizards as well. So I think Scottie Pippen should be, I think he should be like 40+% owned on this slate, Eric. So I've got Scottie Pippen, half my lineups today. One of my favorite options to go to on the entire slate. Popular, but not like crazy chalk or anything like that. I love Scottie Pippen.
He's my second favorite play on the entire slate. As I said, getting away from Alvarado. I'm not getting away from Scottie Pippen. I am all aboard. It's almost like you heard Lindy's leans, likes, or locks last night. Where Jalen Suggs lock, want to get to everything that is Scottie Pippen Jr. It just made way too much sense. You look at his rates, no John Morant, minutes upside could be through the roof in a spot like this. I absolutely love these two for tournaments.
Yeah, also agree with you that he's a really good pivot off of Alvarado, where they kind of, Alvarado's a little bit more popular, but not like a crazy gap or anything. I have way more exposure to Pippen than I do to Alvarado. I'm a little bit underweight to the field on Alvarado, and I'm way over on Scottie Pippen. So that's the direction that I like going in for GPPs here. And I'm just running one final sim with all of our updated information. It won't change anything significantly for me, but maybe if players get moved around a few percentage points or something. D. Wibbins says, any input on single stat points? I got free tickets. Would you just pick the top projected chalk? All right. Well, first, I'm going to have to look up exactly what this is. All right. Single stat points. All right. So you're just rostering the guys who are expected to score the most points. I mean, I don't have a good sense for like what the ownership is or anything like that in this, but I mean, like, how do you get away from guys like Doncic, even though he's going to be popular? Here's the way I'll do it. Favorite contrarian guy to be one of the three highest scoring players on the slate in terms of just points, Eric. LaMelo is one for me.
That isn't one of the popular guys or expensive guys, because
like who just expects to score the most, just not fantasy points, just actual real life points. Who isn't like
that isn't Jokic and Doncic
player.
Okay. So yeah, Jokic and Doncic would be the two. SGA.
You don't consider SGA a MVP caliber player?
MVP caliber play? No, I didn't hear the question, obviously. Bradley Beal will play here. I was doing something else. MVP caliber player who has a chance to exceed or
non-MVP caliber player who has a chance to be one of the three highest scoring players on the slate, just in terms of points, not fantasy.
Jalen Johnson would be there, although I love Jalen Johnson. Go Duke. Jalen Johnson, Franz Wagner. I'll throw out Franz again. I mean, there's like 35% usage potential for him in spots like this.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to go with LaMelo for my pick there. And yeah, I'd say like play some of the chalk guys and then mix in like a Franz Wagner, LaMelo type. And that'll give you unique lineups that you're not playing like the exact same three players that the entire field is playing there. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Was there another question that came in? How are you doing on your lineups, by the way, Eric?
I think I'm going to be good. I got 7 minutes. Yeah, I got time.
Stokes wants to know how much Miles Turner is too much. He says he is 80%. 80% is more Miles Turner than I would want to play. I don't have anybody at like those kinds of level of play for today. I've got Miles Turner a little more than half my lineups.
Yeah, I have Miles Turner in a lot of lineups. That is for Jeremiah Robinson Earl, my second highest owned behind Turner, Scottie Pippen Jr. third. They're all right in that like 50 to 65% owned mark.
And all right, we've got that answered. We've got a couple of super chats here. One is from T. Willis. And also, if you guys haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. A new way to get access to all the packages we have at Stokastic. If you guys sign up, there's a link down below in the YouTube description box. It's going to have a link. Here. Jacob threw it up on the screen. So that link, it has a list of all these different books that we're partnered with. Pick'em sites. We've got sports books in here like Caesars, Bet365, FanDuel, although, all you guys are going to be on FanDuel. But here's how it works. If you guys sign up using the link, you have to go through the link we have below. Sign up, deposit, and then place a bet. Take a picture of it. You're going to send it an email to NewsGod. And then once you do that, make a deposit and you make a new account through one of those links down below from that page in the YouTube description box. For each site you sign up for, you get 1 month free of core access to any of the DFS sports that you want at our site. So you could do it for football. You could do it for basketball. You could do 6 of these and you could line them all up for basketball. And that'll get you 6 free months of our core package. Sign up for as many of these as you want and you get 1 free month for each one you do. It's a really, really great way for you guys to get our tools for free. And on top of it, there's great deposit bonus offers. Like, for instance, you guys could see right there that Sleeper, $100 first deposit match. So you're going to put $100 into Sleeper. They give you $100, and then you also get a free month of any core package of your choosing. So great new offer that we thought was a creative way to get you guys access to the tools on the site. So if you are looking for a way to access our stuff for cheaper, this is the way to do it. Make sure you go and click through that link down below in the description box, then follow these 4 steps that are on screen, and they're going to be on that landing page there. Super chats that we have. T. Willis, FanDuel GPP, Mathurin and Cade, or Halliburton and Ivy? I like all these players, by the way. Yeah. Mathurin and Cade or Halliburton and Ivy? For FanDuel, I'm going to say Halliburton and Ivy. I really like Halliburton on FanDuel.
Halliburton on FanDuel and DK, but yeah, FanDuel too. Yeah.
Then David Oakes says best option at any position for $6,200 or less. Okay. Well, Miles, I'm going to assume he's already played Miles Turner, but Miles Turner, if you don't have Miles Turner.
I have a lot more Tobias Harris than I am comfortable saying out loud at 5,900.
I mean, he was my Viagra play. He's my next answer. Yeah. I think it's a good spot for Tobias Harris when in the absence of Jalen Duren. There's big upside there. Look at some of the rebounds that we've seen out of Tobias Harris lately.
Oh, yeah.
Tobias Harris, who's averaging 8 rebounds per game this year. And we got, 7 rebounds out of him last game, 7 rebounds, 5, 8, 14, 10, 11. Now you're taking Duren off the court. There's potential for a lot of upside there for Tobias Harris. You seem kind of not against him, but it seems you've come around on him from before.
No, like in real life, or what are we talking about?
For DFS tonight.
Oh, for DFS, no. Tobias Harris, I'm just fine with. Yeah, I have more than I'm comfortable saying out loud.
And that is going to answer all the super chats. We just got a couple minutes left to go here, guys. If you haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Before we get to lock, Eric, is there any news that you are waiting on that you think could end up shaping your lineups for later?
No, it's probably going to be reacting to how some of the players and the chalk players are doing earlier on. If I need to make some extreme pivots, we kind of know what some of the chalkier pieces are. Again, I'm very curious to see kind of where late Houston, there's some interesting pieces there, I think, that nobody's really getting to, where I could make some moves, and how much Jokic people are actually going to play, because I'm right around that 20% mark, like being double the field there. I'm just very curious where people end up landing, because I think ownership could look very, very different from what we expect. But these first games, once this wave comes in, we're going to be able to kind of really know how much people have left in their lineups, because they are very, very popular.
Jamal Murray for me. If Jamal Murray ends up sitting, because I've been anticipating he's going to play, that would really alter my lineups. That's something I'm going to be keeping an eye on with Josh. The other reason it's the piece of injury news I'm keeping an eye on is because it's the only piece of injury news that matters that's left. So it kind of has to be the default answer, because the other players who are left on the injury report, it's Jaime Jaquez Jr. Him being out isn't going to make any kind of difference. Steven Adams, if he is in or out, like, that's not going to make any kind of difference to my lineup. So yeah, really Jamal Murray is the only big piece of injury news here that I'm waiting on. So final question before I head on over to playback with Josh. Who is the player who you are most nervous will ruin your night? Whether it's somebody you don't have exposure to, or somebody you have a lot of exposure to that you're just afraid might not go your way.
I have 5% Jose Alvarado. I'm not doing anything different. I'm just getting to Suggs. I'm getting to Pippen. I'm just jamming them. If Jose Alvarado could ruin my night very, very quickly. I have almost none. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm underweight to him, but it's not 0% for me. So he wouldn't be somebody who ruins my night. One that I am underweight to, who's expected to be super popular, is Jaren Jackson Jr. Like, there's a really, really big ceiling for Triple J, but I don't know if you saw his final ownership is close to 40%, Eric. I don't have close to 40% of Triple J. It's a great spot for him. Great matchup. John Moran is out, but I just didn't get to the 40% of him that the field has.
Nor should you. I'm with you.
Yeah. But you could certainly see him having a ceiling that ends up ruining us today, unless
For sure.
because I've got 20% of him, so about half the field. If one of those lineups ends up doing good, then wouldn't be the end of the world. But yeah, my preference would be not a massive game for Jaren Jackson Jr. That is going to do it for Eric and I here on the YouTube. But playback, I'm going to be joining Josh over in playback. I'm dropping the link right now into the YouTube chat. We are looking for the Jamal Murray news. That is something that could certainly end up shaping the slate. They're spamming that playback chat in there. So we're looking for the Jamal Murray news. Josh and I are going to be sweating out the games. We'll react to any of the injury news that maybe comes out unexpected or late starting lineup. So guys, see you over in playback. Join that link I just dropped in. Have a great weekend. Good luck tonight.